Well, hello everybody, and today we are at Dingle Farm, and it's a special day today because we are here to talk to the amazing Matthew Foster. He's one of the few fruit growers in the country who actually has a really strong hold on what he's doing, and in this video we're going to talk about training and pruning stone fruits. So Matthew, the lovely Matthew Foster, I want to pick your brains. I want to get that information out of your head and onto this camera, and I want you to tell me what you know. I want a masterclass here of how to grow and prune these stone fruits. So by stone fruits, what do you actually mean by that?
It's basically what we call a drupe. So it's the plum, apricot, cherry family that has one central pip stone in the middle. And that's the first part of the fruit that when it hardens, the fruit evolves around that stone and creates the whole fruit. And that's the reproductive cycle of the plant. And so at the moment we're seeing the first stage of that, the flowers.
So so you say drupes, but what would be examples, common examples that people would know of these stone fruits?
It's all plums, cherries, apricots.
Ah, so I do like an apricot.
Damsons, it's all the same. It's got one central stone.
Yeah.
Some, especially in the plums and apricots, you get clingstones or freestones that we refer to when we're looking at different plant material.
All right.
So whether the flesh is actually attached to the stone at the point of ripening.
Oh, okay.
So sometimes you'll buy some peaches from a supermarket and you'll eat it, and the stone will come away freely from the middle, and you think, oh, that's easier to eat. It's nicer, isn't it? But when it's actually stuck to the stone, it's just difficult to eat, and you end up with half the fruit down your face. So, you know, so when we're looking at plant selections, these sort of things are considerations. They're not everything, because we're looking for the best flavour, some degree of shelf life, depending on what that fruit does for us.
Yeah.
Okay, so tell us a bit more about this here, these cherries.
Well,
for us at the moment.
This is cherry in full flower. The variety is Sweetheart. Its origin genetically is from Canada. So we have two different genetic types. We have Northern Central Europe, and then we have Canada as areas of genetic difference. And what we find in Canadian varieties, they are more self-fertile.
Yeah.
Okay.
And a lot of plant breeders will be looking for a certain amount of Canadian genetics so that it's easier for fruit to set. So when we look at this branch, you see all these beautiful flowers in their prime. Every single one of those flowers is capable of setting a fruit. The difficulty is, if that were to happen, you'd end up with a hell of a lot of small fruit. So we don't really want that. So when we're looking at tree design, which this is interesting, we're trying to train a tree to make sure that it's getting the maximum amount of light, getting the much openness so that we get good airflow through, good health to the tree, easy to see the fruit, and it creates a bit of competition within the tree so that it doesn't set every flower to a fruit. We want it just so.
See, I see, I mean, when you grow a cherry tree in your garden, you sort of grow an upright trunk and stuff, and then the branch work comes off there, which you produce your cherries on. But here, this is unusual. You kind of layering almost the trunk here, quite an acute angle. So what's going on here? What's the reason behind this strange? I mean, it's a bit like tomato growing a wee bit. Yeah, these strange kind of angles coming off here. What's that about, Matthew?
Well, every cherry tree, and cherries are more prone to this than the plums or apricots, they're very apically dominant. And always what they want to do is search for the light. You've got to remember a lot of these origins of fruit trees over the last hundreds of thousands, millions of years have been growing in forests. And they're competing with other forest plants to try and get to the top and get the light. Yeah. And we don't have ladders that are 200 feet tall, so we don't want to risk our lives while picking the fruit. Yeah. And we're trying to be economic, so in every which way we're trying to control what this tree naturally wants to do with what we want to do in order to be able to manage and pick the fruit. So the first stage of that is have a dwarf rootstock.
Dwarfing rootstock, yeah.
That actually, you can see down here, you can see how the scion starts here, and you've got the rootstock below, and there's quite a bulge on that graft union as the sap flow is restricted, and then the tree reacts and tries to adjust and grow. So that rootstock's doing its job.
So all your commercial varieties for fruit production, they are all grafted onto a rootstock.
The natural rootstock really is Prunus avium, which you know, if this was grafted onto Prunus avium rootstock, it would be about 8 meters, 9 meters tall.
Wow.
So we've, over the last 20-30 years, tried to find the more dwarfing rootstocks so that we can actually control the cherry tree and make sure that it's productive. And up to millennium, we had Colt rootstock, which is a semi-dwarfing, and even that, as soon as you pruned it, you had a massive reaction. It's Newton's law, every reaction has an equal and opposite reaction.
Yeah.
You prune into a hard bit of wood that's wanting to grow, and you'll just get more growth. So the revolution for modern cherry production is the rootstock from Germany called Gisela.
Yeah.
And we have 2 numbers, Gisela 5 and Gisela 6, and any garden centre now you buy a cherry tree in will have a graft onto probably G5, which is the most common. And that creates a tree that will be about 3 meters tall in your garden and no bigger. And you can pretty much pick all the fruit in the first few years of its life.
Really?
Up.
It's very quick, isn't it?
Yeah.
So going back to these, do you want to outline how you would prune these? I think a lot of people, they buy a cherry, they kind of just leave them. They just let them grow, do their own thing. But
that's
you know,
an error. Yeah, it really is a big error on cherry, because you need to train it from a very young age into replacing wood. And what we mean by that is that we're trying to control the vigor. We do that by training, but also we need to be creating 1-year wood all the time, because the fruit bears best off 2-year and 3-year wood.
Oh, that's interesting.
And if you leave it to get lazy, it will start to lose. And you can see, if we focus down here, you can see here where that's 3-4-year-old wood, and it goes bare. The buds have died, and they'll never come back from there. If I was to use these secateurs and prune there, you'd be lucky if you got any more regrowth. Whereas on an apple, plum, apricot, there are thousands of buds on that layer of cambium, and they'll all react and you'll get some growth. Now, it may happen on some cherries and it may be more varietal. You just don't know until you do it. So if we were to prune, we always prune back to a bud.
Yeah.
So for example here, if we say we want this tree, we've got all the space over here, we want to grow branch, we would do that. And then we've got an inward facing bud shooting that way, and that is where the tree will grow. We've almost created there an apical bud on that branch.
So do you want to explain what an apical bud is?
Well, it's the absolute leader on the tree. So here we've got the apical bud of this tree was naturally selected to go up there.
Okay.
Now, if we hadn't have layered the tree down, it would be here. And what we've done is laid the tree down so the sap flow has been distorted, and what it wants to do is react and go upward. And this is a system of growing cherries from Washington State University. Matt Whiting has developed this, and he calls it, I think it's a bit of a joke, play on words, but it's called a UFO system, upright fruiting offshoots.
That's a great name.
Yeah, and it gets attention, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You say, oh, I've got a UFO in my orchard, and it's a bit stupid, but the essence is to make sure that you're bringing the tree down to the height where you can pick the fruit. And it's a 2-dimensional system, so that if you look down the row, it's a fruit wall.
Yeah.
That's in the trade we call it a fruit wall. And that is basically capturing as much light as possible. And light is everything in fruit farming, because that's where you get the bud development and you get the quality into the fruit bud, which means you get quality of fruit. So what we're trying to do with a lot of stone fruit is keep them healthy, keep the maximum amount of light in, and can keep the vigor invigorated, and making sure that every single bud has got the best opportunity for growth.
So to conclude, what would be your top tips for pruning cherry trees? I mean, like time of year, what would you say?
Well, historically you were told when you got sap flow you can start pruning because the wound would heal quick. But you've really got to prune in the spring, ideally when it's dry. And by that, especially if you've only got I mean, we've got here 20,000 trees to look after, so it's not practical. I can pick and choose a timing that's absolute perfect. We have to take our opportunities when we can with the weather. But if you had a few trees in your garden, really pick a nice summer's day, I would say sometime around end of April, early May, where you're in the morning, the dew's gone, cuts are dry, it's not going to rain that afternoon, and you don't get any dew coming back in the evening, and you make your cuts at that point and you're fine. But you know, you've got to do things. If you point down here, you've got to remove the dead wood. It's absolutely critical, first and foremost. Remove anything that's coming out of the way. For us, a tractor would hit that, but for you, it's not a productive piece of wood. So it's a tidy up first and foremost. Anything that's crossing over, anything that's just getting a bit confused. And then the really critical thing is, and we can see here, we've got what we call heading back. So we've cut back into that branch, and what we're doing there is trying to get a reaction out of it. That's what I said earlier about creating that quality 1-year wood, because that will now grow this year outwards in a branch, and then the year after, next year, that will then break fruit bud, and the year after that you get fruit. So what we want to be doing is constantly replacing the wood, constantly creating young wood and keeping the tree young. So this tree is about, which was planted 2013, so it's its 10th year.
Yeah.
And you look at the wood and it's old 2-3 year wood.
Well, you know what, Matthew, that is absolutely brilliant information. It's great to get that out and get the information out of someone like yourself who's so knowledgeable on the subject. Thank you very much, and that is great, and hopefully we're going to get you in another video soon. Thank you and goodbye.